Welcome, welcome everyone. My name is Ashby, and we are going to get started today on our Southern Beyond Survival. So let's start off with our interpretation from Sinsotle. We're going to go through our presentation.
Thank you so much. Hi, y'all. My name is Talis, and I am here with my co-interpreter, Maria. And we are here with Sensontle Language Justice Cooperative. Hola a todos, yo me llamo Talis y estoy aquí con mi co-intérprete María y estamos aquí de parte de Sensontle, la Cooperativa de Justicia del Lenguaje. Y vamos a repasar un poco cómo va a funcionar la interpretación el día de hoy en esta llamada. We're just going to go over a little bit how interpretation will work for tonight's call. Nuestros movimientos son multilingües y se requiere de un compromiso de todos para crear un espacio multilingüe. Our movements are multilingual tonight, and it takes everyone's commitment to create a multilingual space. How can we practice language justice together? ¿Cómo podemos practicar la justicia del lenguaje juntos? Recuerden respirar al estar hablando después de cada frase, hacer una pausa al hacer preguntas o cuando la persona cambia, la persona que está hablando o participando para que los intérpretes les podamos seguir e interpretar su mensaje completo. Remember to breathe after each sentence, take a pause after asking a question or when the speakers switch so that us interpreters can follow you and interpret your entire message accurately. Solo tenemos un micrófono, entonces solamente podemos interpretar por una persona a la vez. We only have one mic, so we can only interpret for one person at a time. Si pudieran silenciar su micrófono mientras no están hablando, nos va a permitir escuchar a la persona que está participando mejor. If you could mute your mic while you're not participating, that'll allow us to hear the person who is participating better. Recuerden hablar en voz alta, fuerte y claro para poder escucharles bien. Remember to speak loud and clear so we can listen and hear everything you're saying. Y recuerden hablar a un ritmo un poquito más lento, especialmente al estar leyendo o si estamos hablando de algo que nos emociona mucho, tendemos a acelerarnos. Es un recordatorio de hablar a un ritmo más lento, por favor. Remember to slow down, speak at a moderate pace, especially when we're reading or if we're speaking about something that we're very passionate about, to slow down a little bit so that we can follow you and interpret you correctly. Entonces, ¿cómo acceder a la interpretación para la llamada del día de hoy? Si están accediendo a través de una computadora, en la parte inferior hay un globito que dice interpretación. Si hacen clic ahí, pueden seleccionar su idioma de preferencia en el que quieren escuchar y participar en la llamada, inglés o español. O si son bilingües, pueden dejar la interpretación apagada. Queremos que ambos idiomas sean bienvenidos en este espacio, entonces siéntanse libertad de hablar tanto inglés como en español y todo será interpretado en ambos idiomas. Si están accediendo a través de un teléfono inteligente, en la parte inferior derecha hay 3 puntitos que dicen más. Ahí pueden hacer clic, de nuevo seleccionar interpretación de idiomas y una vez más su idioma de preferencia, inglés o español. So how to access interpretation on tonight's call. If you are accessing the call via a computer, there's a little globe at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. If you click there, and then you can select your language of preference in which you would like to participate and listen to the call in English or Spanish. We want both languages to be welcome in the space, so we welcome you all to participate in either or, and anything you say will also be heard in the other language. And if you're bilingual, you can always leave interpretation turned off. If you're accessing via a smartphone, there's 3 little dots in the bottom right corner of your screen, and there you can click language interpretation. And then once again, select your preferred language. Y por último, si tienen cualquier problema con la interpretación, si no están escuchando cualquier cosa, por favor, déjenos saber inmediatamente, escriban un mensaje en el chat. And if there are any issues with the interpretation, please let us know immediately via the chat and we will help you out as soon as we can. Muchísimas gracias y que tengan una excelente llamada. Thank you so much and have a wonderful call.
Thank you so much, Dallas. So we'll get into our tech support really quickly so that everyone knows how to utilize Zoom throughout this session. Once again, my name is Ashby Haywood Kambahi. I work in Highlanders Library and Archives, but today I am your chat monitor. I'm one of 2. So to quickly go over things, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the mute button, looks like a microphone, and a camera to stop your video as well. We will be recording today's workshop and we'll be sharing it publicly. So we would love for you to stay on video. If it's comfortable for you to do so, it's helpful for facilitators to see your face. But we also understand if you want to turn off your videos for any reason, especially knowing that we are recording it. Also, if you want to give reactions, especially affirmations, some thumbs up, maybe some laugh reactions, you're welcome to do so and encouraged to do so through the reactions button on the bottom of your screen. That is also on that menu at the bottom. You can also respond, or excuse me, raise your hand if you want to respond. We ask that everyone rename yourself to include your name and your pronouns, very similar to what I did. You can click on participants to do so, and then find yourself at the top of the list, click on more, and then rename. We've also enabled captions, so you can click the closed captions button to turn them on once again at the bottom of your screen in that menu. If you have any technical trouble today, you can direct message one of our tech supports, that's Kayla. So you can find Kayla, tech support, or you can message me. We also have Janae, who's serving as another of our chat monitors. There you go. Kayla just put a message in the chat. Thank you. So please, if you're running into any troubles, just shoot us a message and we will do our best to get you straightened together. All right, I'm gonna kick it off to April now.
Thanks, Ashby, and welcome everyone. My name is April. I use she, her pronouns. And for those of you who can't see me, I am a Black woman with shoulder length curly hair and a teal and tan patterned shirt. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, on the land of the Shawnee, Osage, Adena, Hopewell, and Yuchi people. And we want to invite you all to share your name, pronouns, location, organization, and the land acknowledgement and any other acknowledgement you want in the chat. We are sharing a link there. If you don't know what land you're on, you are able to look that up. We do this because we want to honor land, the original inhabitants, also our elders and ancestors, the struggles and resistance, and folks who continue to labor with unjust compensation, and the legacy of folks working for solidarity economies and collective liberation. And I want to invite my other trainers who are facilitating with me today, if they want to introduce themselves in the space while folks are introducing themselves in the chat.
I can go next. Hey, everybody. My name is Denzel. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm currently residing on Cherokee and Chickasaw land. For those who cannot see, I am a Black man with a short haircut, wearing a blue t-shirt, and I am super excited to be here with y'all.
Hey y'all, my name is David Ferris. I prefer name only today. I'm on Cherokee and Muskogee land in otherwise known as Stone Mountain, Georgia. And for those folks who can't see me, I have curly hair on one side and sort of buzzed on the other. I'm a white person with glasses and I have a mustache. And I'm wearing a pink sweater. I'll kick it back to April.
Thanks, David and Denzel. And I just want to say, for folks who can't see the chat, the South has definitely shown up tonight. So excited to see that. And in that vein, I want to kind of get us started with a little grounding here. And I want folks to consider what Southern Beyond Survival means to you. If folks want to take a moment and write a few words on your own paper. And what we're going to do is we want you to think about it in a way that relates to a Southern dish or food that embodies that for you. We have a broad definition of what a Southern dish is. Southern to us is anyone who is or has lived in the South. And a Southern dish is any dish that connects you with your people in the South. So as folks reflect on that, if you want to share 1 or 2 words about your dish in the chat, that would be really, really awesome. And again, we're just gonna reflect on our theme here, which is Southern Beyond Survival. And we want folks to reflect on, what does that mean to you? And if you want, you can take a moment to write a few words on your own paper. And then we want you to consider, what Southern dish or food does that embody for you? What does it inspire in you? What does it make you think of? Is there a memory that connects you to what comes up when you think of Southern Beyond Survival, or a dish connected to that memory? And for folks who would like, if you could please share in the chat. It looks like we've got gumbo, all the pieces together making something beautiful. Somebody said smoked greens. That sounds amazing. We've got crab stuffing, collard greens. I'm loving it. It all sounds really, really good. Fried taters. Yes, nothing like some fried potatoes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Washington. I'm driving home from work, so I'm not able to put it in the chat, but I'm from Ruleville, Mississippi, the Mississippi Delta. And I would say my Southern dish would be fried catfish.
Love it. Fried catfish and Ruleville in the house. Thank you for letting us know. So we've got okra, cobbler, shrimp and grits, soup beans and cornbread, shrimp po' boys, fried cabbage. Yes, I love it. Ashley says, not a food, but I think of my grandmother's cast iron and how durable and all purpose it is. Can do anything and creates and holds magical things. Yes, for sure. Biscuits and gravy, blackberry doobie. I've never had blackberry doobie, but I'm definitely intrigued. Yes, it is. I think it probably is making everybody hungry. So feel free to continue sharing in the chat. We are gonna move to a slide here that's gonna help us edit our names one more time. We want folks to be able to participate in supportive spaces as we unpack some of these terms today. And so we're going to have folks rename themselves based on language and race, so that when we break out into breakout rooms, we'll be able to pair people up. And so if you are Black and speak English, you're going to put a 1E in front of your name. If you're Black and you speak Spanish, it'll be 1S. For people of color with non-Black heritage, you're going to put a 2 and an E if you speak English, and an S if you speak Spanish. And then if you're white, you're going to use the number 3, and again, use the letter E if you speak English, or S if you speak Spanish. And then if you don't want to participate in a breakout room or just need some time to yourself, we do have a quiet room, and you can put a 4 in front of your name. You can change that throughout the workshop if you decide you want to participate or become able to. And so just one more time, if you're Black, you're going to use a 1 with the letter E for English, S for Spanish. People of color with non-Black heritage, it'll be the number 2. And again, E for English, S for Spanish. White will be the number 3, E for English, S for Spanish. And then if you would like to go to the quiet room, you can use number 4. And I am going to go ahead and kick it to my co-facilitator, David.
Hey, y'all. Welcome again. So we got you started on renaming yourselves now, because that'll help our tech folks get us ready for that first breakout. And in the meantime, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the background of Highlander. So Highlander was founded in 1932 in Monteagle, Tennessee. It was founded as a way to use education to create a new social order. So folks really believed in the power of bringing people together to teach each other. By the late 1930s, Highlander was training union organizers from across the South and fought segregation in the labor movement, refused to hold segregated workshops after 1944. And workshops at Highlander really laid the groundwork for the Montgomery bus boycott, the founding of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the citizenship schools during the Civil Rights Movement, which helped thousands of Black people learn to read and write so that they could pass these bullshit literacy tests in order to vote. We're gonna skip the clip, tech support folks, just because of time, and I'm gonna keep kind of summarizing the history. So throughout its history, Highlander was attacked by law enforcement. Oh, but that screen share of that slide was beautiful. Let's definitely keep those beautiful pictures up. Throughout its history, Highlander was attacked by law enforcement, government officials, the Ku Klux Klan, and others defending segregation. In 1960, the state of Tennessee revoked Highlander's charter and seized its land and buildings. The staff moved to Knoxville and continued the work under a different name and charter, the Highlander Research and Education Center. In the late 60s and 70s, Highlander focused on Appalachia, supporting workers around different worker issues, black lung, strip mining, the concentration of land ownership. In the 80s and 90s, Highlander supported groups fighting pollution and toxic waste throughout the South, and forged relationships across borders and started doing international work as well. In the 90s, this work continued. In the late 90s, Highlander began supporting youth, LGBTQ, and immigrant activists, and doing language justice work. And in the 21st century, Highlander has worked with young people, immigrants, African Americans, low-income white folks, and really just everyone that lives in the South to build a broad movement for social and economic justice. We continue to use popular education, which is a practice of inspired by the idea that we know a lot and are powerful, and everyone is a teacher and a learner, and influenced by Indigenous practices of circle sharing. We're going to link our history slides and our videos in the resources. So sorry that we couldn't share some of that now, but I'm going to kick it to April. Back to April.
Thanks, David. And so David's given you some Highlander history, and now I want to kind of orient you to the Economics and Governance program. And that is the program that David, Denzel, and I are a part of, and who are bringing you this workshop. And if I can get the next slide there. There we go. Just to give you a little bit of a history of what the Economics and Governance team has been up to at Highlander historically. Of course, as David mentioned, there was support for labor organizing and cooperatives in the 30s through the 50s, research and organizing around deindustrialization, labor, land ownership, and international worker exchanges from the 70s to the 90s. In 2008, we were introduced to solidarity economies at the World Social Forum. And then from 2011 to 2016, we were involved in the Southern Grassroots Economies Project and Co-op Econ. There's also been the Appalachian Transition Fellowship. There's been the development of the Mapping Our Futures curriculum and a training of trainers, both on-site and online, that span the course from 2011 to 2020. I would definitely recommend checking out the curriculum. It's available on our website. We've also created the Solidarity Economy in the South Network in 2018, and that is still in existence. Last year, we were able to start the Solidarity Squadship program to support grassroots movement in the South around solidarity economy. And then this year, of course, you are here for the launch of the Southern Beyond Survival series. And if I can get the next slide there. Why do we do all of this work? Well, our strategic goal and orientation is that we aim to abolish white supremacist capitalist patriarchy and all related forms of domination, marginalization, exploitation, and harm that prevent Southern people from meeting their needs through collective self-determination by building Southern people's power to resist exploitation and build alternatives to domination economy. And we believe that this happens by resisting, building, and healing. And our work is focused on strengthening the solidarity economy in the South through post-capitalist alternatives and grassroots governing power. And I will go ahead and kick it to Denzel to give you a little bit of background and information about the Southern Beyond Survival series.
Thank you, April. And so, hey, y'all, this is Denzel again. I'm going to talk a little bit about the workshop series that we're in. This is one workshop in a series of introductory workshops. The Threads workshop series is about grassroots community organizing for transformation, combining popular education methodologies with campaigns to demand a better world and to build real community-based alternatives. It's for folks living and working in the South who are seeking more than the bare minimum of survival that capitalism offers, rooted in the legacies built by Black women in the South, like Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, who insisted we deserve and can build lives and communities that are transformational and transcendent. Participants will be pushed to think beyond the constant reactionary state created by the converging crises of fascism and racial capitalism amid the pandemic, to imagine what alternative systems and ways of living look like in the South, including solidarity economies, collective governance, and shared power. The series will be a springboard for folks to build analysis, share knowledge, and take action through serious catalyzed grassroots organizing. We're hosting these introductory level workshops without capping the participants, which means we're sacrificing some elements of popular education where we spend more time in smaller groups building relationships and telling stories and practicing, building a community of practice and dialogue and inquiry. We hope you will take these materials and questions and conversations back to your communities and organizations and practice your popular education and facilitation skills in leading these kinds of conversations. And with that, I'm going to pass it back off to my comrade April to get us started with agreements.
Thanks, Denzel. So we have a lot of folks in this space, many of us, most of us probably, who have not shared space before. So we want to begin by starting with an understanding of how we're going to interact and not interact, how we're going to take up space and not take up space, how to create a safer space to share, how folks relate to oppression and privilege, and setting some standard. White and non-Black people of color folks, come prepared to be mindful of the ways you come to this space. I do want to invite folks that before you speak, or when you speak, to share your name and pronouns at the beginning. We're glad folks from outside the South are here to follow Southern leadership. Please remember that this is a space that centers Southern voices and experiences. And also, because we have so many folks, one of the things we're going to use this evening is, if we were in person, it would be called a dynamics box. But since we're on Zoom, it will be a dynamics person. And so if there is a dynamic that you're experiencing with somebody, or that you notice that you want us to know about, that makes you feel uncomfortable, or that maybe makes you feel really great, you can send a message to Ashby, and then they can make sure it's communicated to us. And so again, if there's a dynamic that you notice that makes you feel uncomfortable, or you're just super excited about, either one, you can communicate that to Ashby, and Ashby will let us know. And I will kick it to David to go over what some of these agreements look like.
All right, y'all. So these are some agreements that we're just going to offer this space to help us move a little bit more quickly into the actual conversations and why we're here. So we're going to ask you in the whole group just to remember that we're going to share the slides and materials. So no need to take copious notes. That we're trying to center Southern and marginalized voices and experiences. So just be really mindful of who you are in this space. Participate fully at the same time as if our liberation is at stake. Remember that everyone is a teacher and a learner. So come with a curious mind and excited to learn from your fellow folks here. Self-care and community care. So remember to take care of yourself in the space. If you need to step away, please do that so that you can return and be part of this collective. And we're going to go with the flow. Please expect non-closure. We're going to open up some conversations tonight. We're going to provide some materials that hopefully you can take back and have other conversations where you are in your communities, but we might not finish the conversation. In small groups, make sure to say your name and pronouns before you speak and describe yourself the first time. Use one mic or try to speak one at a time. Try to use loving speech. Try to pause before speaking just because we are on Zoom. Equalize power relationships. So think about, think about your identities and your position in proximity to power. Balance good listening with sharing openly. And if you have any challenges and any challenges at all, feel free to leave the breakout room. Come back to the main room. All right. Let's see, we will have a couple breaks. Also, I did want to say that. And I'm going to kick it to Denzel to get us kind of introduced to the first chance we get together to have smaller group conversations.
Thank you, David, and thank you, April, for the previous section. Now it's time to eat, y'all. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our small group shares, just so we can understand how the activity will go, and so we can have some really fruitful discussions. So again, the first breakout will be by race. So again, as we said at the beginning, make sure that you rename yourself. So if you're Black, you want to include a 1. And if you speak English or Spanish, use an E or an S. 2 is for non-Black folks who are people of color. Please use E or S for whether you want to speak English or Spanish. 3 is for white folks. Again, the E and the S are for English and Spanish. And 4 is for the quiet room. And we have the screen here to give you a point of reference as well, in case you need to figure out which one you want to use. So for our small breakout groups, we're gonna be breaking out for 10-minute discussions for 2 terms. It's gonna be 2 discussions. They're gonna be 10 minutes. The first category is gonna be a discussion of oppression and privilege. And in those conversations, we're going to be focused on a couple of questions that you'll see in the slides, namely, what does it mean based on your experience? And then there'll be an additional question there as well to talk through both oppression and privilege. And then we'll come back, we'll do a share back, we'll talk with folks about what they've learned. And so through these small groups, shares and sharebacks, we're using steps 1 and 2 of the pop-ed spiral. We'll share some definitions and thoughts about how these terms connect, which is step 3, adding new information, right? And so these 10 minutes will go by quickly, so don't spend more than 1 minute per person sharing. And before you go to your groups, and we're going to provide this in the chat here, make sure to click the slide links so that you have access to them before we go into the breakouts, because they'll disappear otherwise. We ask that you pick someone in your group to take notes for on the slides for each term. We're actually going to provide the slides for you here in the chat. They're going to be 4 groups. And so each group is going to get 4 sets of slides to submit their answers for the different small group share discussions. So everyone in their group will have space to input their answers on the slides. And then group 25 will be the quiet room. And so with that being said, are there any questions about what we're about to do? Okay, and feel free to drop them in the chat if you do. But with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and begin our small group breakouts.
I'm still working on it, not quite yet ready.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, in this first breakout, the two terms that you want to discuss are oppression and privilege. And you just want to reflect on what does it mean to you. And so there's no right or wrong answer, just what comes up for you when you hear the term. And again, in the slides we shared there in the chat, you'll see your group number, and you'll see the term that that sheet is for at the top, and you'll just jot down a few notes for your group number.
I came back because I couldn't get into a room. I was in the silent room and I didn't know where else to go. So I just clicked to leave that room.
Patricia, did you want to be in the silent room?
No, I think I got moved there because there was some information missing.
Gotcha. Do you want to say anything about what oppression means to you while we're almost at time?
Oh. Oppression means to me that I'm always going to be looking to see who's got my back or whose back must I have.
Thank you. And do you want to say anything about what privilege means to you?
Privilege means to me, there's an expression that I've heard forever that says, I have a ribbon. That you're at a point where you no longer have to be concerned about whether or not you're going to have a place in the room.
Thank you for sharing those.
Okay, do you want me to keep the breakout room open or closed now?
Yeah, we're at 51, so I think it's probably good to close them.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back, folks.
Folks must be having some good conversation. They're hanging on to the last second.
That's good stuff. Okay. Let's see, just waiting on folks to come back. All right, I think we might have everybody back now. Looked like everybody was hanging on to the last second. It must have been some great conversations. But welcome back, y'all. So as I mentioned earlier, now what we're gonna do is take a little bit of time to share what you all discussed in your groups. And so what we're gonna do now for the next 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to ask you all what does oppression mean to you? What does it mean to you? And you can share this in the chat. And if you want to come off mute, we ask that you give your name and pronouns, and we ask that you share your thoughts within a minute at most. We want to see if we can get maybe 2 or 3, and then we want to invite the rest of the folks to share in the chat. Would anybody like to go first?
I'll share a little bit.
Mhm.
What's good, y'all? My name is Natalie Nia Falk. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. And one of the brilliant homies in my group, Group 14, shout out to y'all, said, oppression feels like systematic hurt of my body, my like spirit, and my family. So shout out to you, Maya.
Beautiful. 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 I see we got some responses in the chat as well. Does anybody else like to go? I'm gonna kick it to one more person before I pass it over to my comrade David to talk about privilege.
Well, I'll go.
Mhm.
I'm Willie, and my pronouns are he, him. And for me, power is all-encompassing. Oppression is about power. It is the capacity to determine where people will live, if they will live, what kind of resources they will have access to, jobs, all of that. It even determines what is considered knowledge and music, good food, healthcare, and who gets access to it. That's power. And to me, when people have that kind of power, they can really dehumanize and destroy other people.
Thank you, Willie. And so before I move on to and pass it to David, I want to give us a shared definition of what oppression can mean. And of course, this is not an end all be all. We're all learning together. And so this is one of many framings of oppression, but this one says that oppression is when a group in society exercises its power to mistreat and or take advantage of another group. Oppression is ongoing, historic, and systemic. And by systemic, we mean pervasive across many institutions and parts of society from top to bottom. And with that, I'm going to pass it to David to kick us off with a conversation around privilege.
Rad. Yeah, can someone on our team drop that definition in the chat just so folks can see that? That'd be awesome. Cool, y'all. All right, so we want to hear what some of the highlights were from your conversations about privilege. What stood out to you? What were there any like really juicy pieces that you feel like are really important to share and uplift? All right, I see Martha in the chat saying privilege is unearned advantage, makes lives smoother or easier. Gigi, it's white privilege, which is harmful and dangerous and yet benign. We need another word because too many say, so what? Every group has privileges. Apartheid is just mere privilege. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Gigi. So Patricia in the main room said, privilege to her is not to have to wonder about whether you have a place in the room, which I thought was a beautiful way of describing it. Tanya says it's the inverse of oppression, right? Which is actually something that now that you can see on the slide, the definition we're offering, something we included in our definition too. So the one we're offering is unearned access to resources, power, advantages, special rights, immunity, material and social benefits generally increases the closer you are to dominant identities, and it's the flip side of oppression. It's also systemic. I think that one thing to say here is like, it's basically more borders. It's, it's this kind of, these borders that have to be then defended, and often they're defended using some kind of violence or oppression, right? The way that we defined oppression as a group of society mistreating another group of people. So we really want to like notice how intersecting oppression and privilege are, and we hope that that maybe came out in some of your conversations. All right, I'm going to kick it. I'm going to introduce that we have a 5-minute break. Yay, so turn off your video. Don't look at the screen, step away, do some stretches, some breathing, whatever you need to kind of give yourself energy for the remainder of the workshop. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. And we're excited to jump into the next small breakout when you come back.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a minute to stretch, grab some water if you needed it. We are going to jump into a conversation in small breakouts, this time about power and justice. What does power mean to you? How does it relate to privilege and oppression? How would you describe your relationship with or to power? And the same thing for justice. We are going to be in random breakouts this time, so it will go much quicker. We are redropping the links to the slides here, so we do want somebody to take notes. And again, remember to open those slides before we send you to the breakouts. And the terms that we're going to be discussing this time are power and justice. What do those terms mean to you? How do they relate to privilege and oppression? And how would you describe your relationship to them? I'll drop those questions in the chat here. And if you'd like to be in the quiet room and do not want to go to a breakout, please keep a 4 in front of your name. Otherwise, you will be sent to a breakout to talk about these awesome terms, power and justice. I'm anxious to hear how you all's conversations go. Power is a word that evokes a lot of emotion for me. And so in putting together this workshop, exploring my relationship with power has been very, very interesting, to say the least. So, Kayla, are we ready to get folks to breakouts?
Almost.
Okay. Do folks have any questions? Doesn't look like folks do.
Can you repeat the questions that you want us to ask?
Sure.
Please?
And it really can just be whatever comes up for you when you hear these terms. These are just some guiding questions. What does power or justice mean to you? How does it relate to privilege and oppression? And how would you describe your relationship with or to power and justice?
All right, if folks are ready.
Yeah, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and get folks to breakout rooms. Enjoy your conversations. Welcome back, y'all. See folks slowly trickling in here. Hope you all had some juicy conversations. We definitely had juicy conversations as coworkers when we were discussing this curriculum. So we'll give folks a little bit longer to get back. There we go. They're rushing in now. Okay. So what we want to do now is the same thing we did with the first 2 terms. If we can get a few folks who want to come off mute and share, what did you discuss about power? What came up for you? Especially if you had a strong reaction. I know when I hear the word power and discuss it, I literally have a visceral reaction to the word. And folks can also feel free to drop things in the chat as well. But if I can get a volunteer to go first here. Nobody wants to share what they discussed about power?
Yo puedo.
Go ahead.
Bueno, en mi grupo
In my group, in my team, we spoke about how power is basically a tool that is used, whether it's to give privileges or to oppress other people. And we spoke about power as far as making decisions, where there's money at stake. And also we spoke about justice, and justice is if everything was equitable and we all got what's just without any prejudices or privileges. Also, one of my group members said that justice would be to be able to be oneself here, there, and everywhere. And that's all.
Thank you. And it looks like Alicia, you have your hand raised.
Hi, yeah, I appreciated that answer a lot. And in my group, we were talking about how, I mean, I appreciated someone, I think maybe David had said that privilege is borders, and power is sort of the ability to like get what you want, and to be able to like be on one side of those borders, or to like move to one side of those borders. It's like to cross the border. Yeah.
Thanks, Alicia. And folks can feel free to continue to share in the chat. And we'll take one more person if you all want to share what you discussed about power. In the chat, Mike says control over person or people, which must be perceived by those who wield it and those whom it is wielded against. Concentrated will, desire, and capacity to act. Thank you for that, Mike. And Gigi says, power of itself isn't good or bad. However, it is a tool that isn't well used by marginalized groups. It's subtle at times, and one may not realize its undue pressure in their lives as it comes from the outside, but we also have power within us. And Jeff says, the visceral reaction to me comes from thinking of power as universal, yet somehow real power, it seems, is collective in the ability to pursue collective well-being. Thank you for that, Jeff. And if I can get the slide for power, I think you all really encapsulated this well. Actually, all the slides coming up, you all encapsulated well in your answers. And my struggle with feeling like power didn't always have to be a bad thing. As a marginalized person, when I hear the word power, I just automatically assume it's always bad. I don't want anybody to have power. But in Huey Newton's definition of power, he says, to us, power is first of all the ability to define phenomena, and secondly, the ability to make these phenomena act in a desired manner. And I think Mike's answer really spoke to that. If I can get the next slide there. You all's answers really also spoke to the fact that there is a difference between power and how it is wielded. So what it is and how it is used. And you all did a really good job of making that distinction. There's often a conflation between the two. I know for me, there often is. And so you all did a really good job of pointing that out. And one of the things, yes, Jeff here spoke to, is that power can also be thought of as an energy transfer, like in the physical sciences. And if we consider a sustainable ecosystem, no member of the ecosystem amasses power. Energy that becomes waste is recycled, and power must be in service to the ecosystem or community. Otherwise, it causes harm to the whole. So I just want to offer that on top of what you all offered. And with that, we will move to justice, and I will kick it to David. Actually, no, I won't. If I can go ahead and get a few folks like we did before, popcorn style, you can raise your hand if you want to. Share what came up when you discussed justice in your group. I know for me, I have just as strong of a reaction to the word justice because it seems so elusive, like an enigma, like something that it just is not tangible to me. So if anybody wants to share or drop in the chat. So Natalie says fair rule, fair play, fair outcome. So justice in that sense would equal fairness, both in the way something begins and its outcome, how it ends. Martha says equity of access and outcome. Can I get one more person? So Lindsay says in group 17, they had a similar reaction to mine. Is justice attainable? Gwen says a strong reaction in their room as well, a feeling that humans aren't able to administer it. Our judges are called justices, but they often don't seem to be very wise. Regina says justice and power are interconnected. And Alicia says justice is everyone being able to express their full humanity. And Rachel says someone in our group shared, if it is just, it is loving. So you all just once again really summed up some of the kind of definitions or thoughts we want to introduce to you about justice. So this definition of justice says equal or equitable access to resources, power, material, and social benefits, the absence of oppression, and the redistribution of privileges. For me, this definition challenged me to look for other information I could add to what this means, particularly because I had read a conversation that Bell Hooks had where she said that justice could exist without equality. And that really vexed me for a moment. And she went on to explain that if she has compassion, more compassion for a person, then she acts in a just way to that person, but that's an unequal, it could possibly be an unequal balance of compassion. And so if I can get the next slide there. And so I want to offer you these thoughts on justice from Bell Hooks, who recently transitioned and is a Black activist, scholar, feminist from Kentucky. So near and dear to my heart as a Black woman from Kentucky. And so this says, the heart of justice is truth-telling, seeing ourselves in the world the way it is rather than the way we want it to be. More than ever before, we as a society need to renew a commitment to truth-telling. And then she also says, if we want a beloved community, we must stand for justice, have recognition for difference without attaching difference to privilege. And so I think that those really encapsulate what are ways that we can act as individuals every day to bring justice to fruition in our lives and in our communities. And I do want to hit transformative justice. There's a slide for it there. Transformative justice recognizes that oppression is at the root of all forms of harm, abuse, and assault. It's about transforming the conditions, systems change, replacing oppressive institutions with alternatives that recognize human dignity, help folks heal, allow for autonomy, and create shared power. And so this definition of justice really reconciles this idea of power and oppression and how it exists and how we heal to move forward from a place of love. And so with that, I'm going to kick it to Denzel to talk about intersectionality.
Thank you, April, for a really dope ending to the small group shares. It was a really powerful way and really smooth transition to get into what I'm about to briefly talk about right now, which is intersectionality. And before I offer the definition, I want to name that throughout the work that what we're doing is, I really want to name the underlying theme of what we're doing. In the pursuit of liberation, it's critical that we understand that these systems of oppression are interlocking, right? As we've kind of alluded to earlier, at the very beginning, we don't hold just one identity. We hold several interlocking identities that both speak to a larger either oppressive system or are subject to oppressive systems, right? And so with that being said, I do want to offer a definition of intersectionality for us to sit with. And I understand that there are a lot of very much deeper conversations around intersectionality, but the one that we want to offer is that intersectionality is social categorizations and systemic. Is the idea that social categorizations and systemic oppressions are interconnected. So we're thinking of race, class, gender, etc. Oppressions overlap and are interdependent. And shout out to the queer Black feminists and feminists of color. And we want to name that it speaks to the interconnected nature of social categorizations, such as race, class, and gender as they apply to an individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or advantage. So another way of putting it, we're not just Black, we're not just man or woman or non-binary. We hold multiple identities that all intersect at a certain point that's in our being that impacts the way that we are experience the world. And so one of the things I want to lift up that ancestor Bell Hooks said was that the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy captures the interlocking systems of oppression that Black women in the United States have been and are faced with. And in her work, Hooks does not define each term, which allows for a broader understanding of her theory. And instead, she suggests that these forces operate at the intersections. So to summarize, it is all about the intersection. Is at the intersections where this oppression occurs, and it is at the intersections where liberation must be created and carved into our being and to the material world. And so briefly, before I pass it out to my comrade David, I do want to bring up this activity and concept called the Power Flower. And so essentially this is a tool that we can use to illustrate these intersections, right? And so with this Power Flower, we have different categories such as race, gender, sexual orientation, class, geography, etc., that captures the different overlapping systems of oppression that exist. And so it gives you a chance to actually look at your intersections and where how these systems inform your experience. So you're able to change those colors of the petals based on where your identities and how they interact with other identities in context for larger systems at play. And so the first thing you would do is fill out the first smaller petal with your own identity. So however you identify, and then place the dominant identities on the outermost part of the flower petals. So for example, if we were looking at the racial category, if you were Black, it would be on the innermost portion because we understand this world to be anti-Black. And so just using that as an example, but this is one of many tools that we could use to illustrate and further understand the interlocking forms of oppression that we attempt to describe using the concept of intersectionality. And so with that being said, I want to pass it off to my comrade David to talk a little bit about who benefits from these systems of oppression.
Thanks, Denzel. Yeah, and I want to start by asking everyone here, who benefits from this setup? Who benefits from these interlocking oppressive systems? Who benefits from dividing us along these multiple lines of identity and structural position, right? So that we're divided against each other. Who benefits in your understanding, in your analysis of what's going on? So I see Carolyn says corporations. The owning class from Emily. Thanks, Emily. Non-minorities, power groups. We all do. Interesting. Natalie pointing the finger back at us. Like, what are the ways that we benefit too? The wealthy. The global north. Rich white cis folks. And I appreciate the second part, Natalie, but honestly, no one. Marie says white, wealthy, cis men. Yes, and we'll get to the honestly no one in a little bit when we talk about collective liberation. For now, I just want to share a quick slide that sort of illustrates where we are currently in our political economy, like in our what's happening at the economic level in terms of class. So the top 1%, we're in a situation where the top 1% owns 40% of all the wealth here in the US, or 50% globally. We're in a situation where the 99% own about 60% of the wealth. There are about 2,000 billionaires, and they control more wealth than about 60% of the population. So I know these things are things you've probably all seen, and we know that it's getting worse. It's gotten worse in the pandemic. But yeah, we're excited to take a break and come back and talk about how we collectivize our power to move forward beyond these interlocking systems of oppression. So we'll be back right at 8:40.
All right, y'all, welcome back. I know it's getting a little late, but we are to what I think is the juiciest part of the conversation. We want to talk about collective liberation. We've talked about these terms and how these systems of oppression affect us, how power relates to justice and privilege, but what are we going to do about it, right? And since nobody is free until everybody is free, we got to do it together, right? So as we reflect on the terms that we've talked about, let's consider a term that we hear often, but we don't always reflect on, which is collective liberation. What comes to mind when you all hear this word? Can I get a couple of folks to share? Are you hopeful? Are you disappointed that we're not there yet? Is there a song that comes to mind, a feeling? I know for me, a song that comes to mind is Sweet Honey in the Rock, Ella's song. Alpa says, if it is collective, I don't have to figure it out by myself. We can figure it out together. And Nia says, big and complicated, but possible through relationship building over time. Love it, love it, love it. If I can get slide 35. So collective liberation. We believe that every person is worthy of dignity and respect and a life free from oppression and systemic harm, and that within systems of oppression, everyone suffers, even those with power and privilege. It follows that we must work together to create the kind of world we know is possible. We don't jump into the struggle from the same position of power or privilege, but we don't let the divisions of power and privilege keep us from seeing a shared vision of the future and a shared strategy to move forward. If I can get the next slide there. And so we know that systems of oppression are interconnected, and that means that systems of liberation also must be interconnected. We need to figure out how to communicate and understand why anti-oppression is in our collective interest. It's not a squishing everything together. It's what Angela Davis says is creating complex community, finding our unity within divisions for a shared future and a shared value system, a vision to counter these intersecting oppressions, the interlocking oppressions that we discussed. If Black humanity was dignified and respected in systems of society, we'd all live in a better society. And if I can get what I believe is slide 36.
Yeah, pardon the technical difficulties. I'm just having a hard time.
Oh, it's okay. So we wanted to share some quotes with you. This first one is from a Southern freedom fighter, and who, when I think of the title Southern Beyond Survival, I think of this person. And it's Fannie Lou Hamer. She says, whether you have a PhD or no D, we're in this bag together. And whether you're from Morehouse or no house, we're still in this bag together. And if I can get the next slide there. So if we're all in this together, how do we begin to individually take steps that lead us towards a collective? And here I wanna use another Bell Hooks quote, and it says, the moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. And if I can get that Audre Lorde quote real quick, the one right before it. So what Bell Hooks is saying is that when we love ourselves for who we are, that also impacts our community, because then we're able to give that love to other people, right? And here, Audre Lorde says, I cannot afford the luxury of fighting one form of oppression only. I cannot afford to believe that freedom from intolerance is the right of only one particular group. And I cannot afford to choose between the fronts upon which I must battle these forces of discrimination, wherever they appear to destroy me. And when they appear to destroy me, it will not be long before they appear to destroy you. And so I really feel like that speaks to why we have to work collectively towards liberation. And I want to drop a couple of resources in the chat here for folks. And then I want to kick it to Denzel to talk about what does collective liberation require of us.
Thank you, April. And this is actually a perfect transition right into what the conversation about how we build liberation and make it happen, right? So what I want to do really quickly is I want us for the next 2 minutes, so we'll stop at 48, to take some time to journal. And I want you to journal about 2 questions. One, what will it require for you individually to help bring about this collective liberation force? What is your offering that you can bring into this work? And then the second question I'd like for you to think about is, what can we bring collectively? And after that 2 minutes, we're going to take just a couple, 1 to 2 minutes to share in the chat, and maybe 1 or 2 people can bring up what their answers are. And so now let's take 2 minutes. So we'll come back at 48, and we'll start sharing responses on these 2 questions. All righty, right at 48. So let's start off with the individual contributions. What are some individual ways that you can make a commitment to our collective liberation? And folks can feel free to drop their answers in the chat. And maybe if we can get 1 to 2 people to come off mute and share some of their thoughts.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maya White, she, her pronouns. I said long baths, a lot of like reading, taking time to myself, listening, meditating, listening, and taking time to rest. Because if I'm together, if I'm getting what I need, I can give that back to my community, and I can hold that space for my community to do that for themselves.
Ashe, thank you, Maya. Can we get 1 more person? Got a lot of good stuff in the chat too.
I will come off mute. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I typed in the chat hopeful. I also believe that in us working collectively to change what we see. So hopeful, I use the word because hopefully me working on the inside of myself where I can stir up love and then produce love back out, right? To be able to work with everyone collectively, whether it's Black, white, Hispanic, whatever it is, just work with them in a sense where I'm pouring out love. I'm not doing it through hate. I'm not doing it because of the color of your skin or the color of my skin. It's just all about the love that's within myself. And I just want us to be able to work together to help our communities understand that collective type of love, that we don't have to agree together, but if I love myself, then I can pour out love in any situation and not bring it where it's hate. Because right now we're dealing with hate. We're dealing with, I hate brown people, I hate white people, I hate this, form of people. But I think that at the end of the day, if it's like Sister said before, if I'm doing an inner thing, meditating, just self-searching, when it's time for me to go out and work with others, then I'll be able to just endure more. So I hope I didn't take up too much time. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize for your answer. That was actually beautiful. We really appreciate that. And that's actually a beautiful transition into the second part of the question, which is, what do we need to bring collectively in order to achieve liberation? And if I can get maybe 1 person to come off mute and give an answer to that, and please keep adding to the chat. There's some really, really good answers in the chat as well. So maybe 1. Go ahead. Yes.
Am I up? This is Regina, and
Uh-huh.
I'm doing this for Bell Hooks because she said it. She told me this 20 years, I guess 2005. I was an administrator, met her, spent a couple of days together, and as I shied away from the limelight after having invited her as an administrator to the college where I worked at the time, she said to me something that has impacted me my whole life. And so in this moment right now, I would usually defer, but I would, she said to me in her voice, she said, I was in front of an auditorium of people, I was just telling Regina that she's shying away from the limelight, but she needs to step on stage in the limelight, and so that she can show other people a Black woman that is in a position of power, so others can have permission to do the same. So that was the thing that I remember from her, and as I heard of her passing on. So that's what we can do collectively. If you step into your own power, is what she was saying, then it gives other people permission to do the same. And that I will live with that for the rest of my life. Really, really wonderful. She gave me a gift. And so I'm just now stepping into that power that I shied away from 20 years ago. I'm just now getting there, probably 20 years later. I'm on mute now.
That couldn't have been, there couldn't have been a better way to beautifully close out that. Thank you so much, Regina. That is Beautiful beyond words. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody else who had contributed in the chat and in the conversations throughout our time here. And so now what I'm going to do is pass it off to my comrade April to close us out.
All right, y'all. So we've talked about compassion. We've talked about stepping into our power. We've seen some things dropped in the chat that are examples of things that we can do. So as we get ready to close out tonight, drop something in the chat that you commit to. What's something you're going to commit to do that's an act of compassion? What's something that you're going to commit to do that's going to help you step into your own power so that you can use it in service to collective liberation? Please feel free to drop those. And I'm also going to drop a link here for feedback. We definitely want to hear from you. This is the first time we've done this workshop virtually, so we'd love to hear what you liked and didn't like. I don't know if we're doing a feedback slide. Are we doing a feedback slide, David? No. Okay, no feedback slide. So please, if there's anything you'd like to drop in the chat that you loved or that you'd like us to do differently next time, please let us know. We're doing a public facing workshop every month this year. So we definitely want to hear what you like and what you'd like us to improve on. We also want to invite you to come to our March 5th community organizing workshop. And then also look for our popular education workshop that will also happen in March. We hope that you'll be able to take these materials and questions and conversations back to your communities. Like Denzel was saying earlier, we think the topics we cover in these 5 core workshops, along with Highlander's methodology, form a foundation for grassroots community organizing and long haul work for systems change. And so just so you know, the upcoming workshops will include, in addition to community organizing, it'll include from racial capitalism to solidarity economy, community governance, and also a thriving groups that will help folks really learn together to lean in and be in community with folks, even when it's not so easy. And so we feel like each of these is a key component to building a different world. And we'll be sharing opportunities for resources and funding, greater accompaniment and mentorship from Highlander staff, collective learning, and programs that combine these elements. And we think the recordings, sorry, y'all. We'll also be working to make these workshops, these fundamental workshops, part of a toolkit to be available on our website. And please, if you haven't, check out Mapping Our Futures, the economics and governance curriculum, which I mentioned earlier was available on our website. If I can get the link, potentially, well, it's okay. We don't need the link. We do have some resources that will go out with these slides that we'll send to you. So please definitely check out the ones I mentioned and the ones I didn't have time to mention. I want to thank my co-facilitators, tech support. Thank you all for showing up and participating and inspiring me that collective liberation is possible in my lifetime. And so I want to invite you all to please make a commitment, stick to it. We'll be that much closer. And with that, I want to, are we done, David? Yes, okay. So with that, I want to invite you all to come off mute and say good night to each other.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody, have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Noches, muchas gracias.
Good night.